It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Updates, the show where I update my main and test decks for you on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's APP, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out the links in the description or becoming a member. I would really appreciate it. But today, we're coming with the final deck, I would say, in my main box, and then we'll get into some test decks. And that's Pantlaza, Sun Flavored, aka Sun Favored. Pantlaza is a dinosaur commander from Lost Caverns of Ixalan and got himself some nice new dino friends in Aether Drift, and I can't wait to try them out. Pantlaza says whenever it or another dinosaur we control enters the battlefield, we can discover X, where X is that creature's toughness. Do this only once each turn. A reminder what the discover mechanic is it's like Cascade. The only difference is it can be the same mana value, and if you don't cast it, you can put it into your hand, which is interesting. I have seen it come up a couple times where you discover into something like a heroic intervention or a flawless maneuver, and you don't want to use it at the moment, so you just put it into your hand, and then you're able to use it later. But Pantlaza really tries to do one thing, which is try to get dinosaurs that have bigger toughness than their cost in to cheat in some extra spells. If you think about it, it's not going to take very many dinosaurs of us 2 for wanting our dinosaurs right to get really good. And the goal of discovering is to either get into more ramp, to get ourselves more mana to spend on future turns, or to get ourselves into value or combat enchantments, so that way we can just make sure that we're building our board to be more threatening in the future. But all right, if we're going to talk about dinos, we got to have a cast of dinos. And a lot of this cast remains unchanged from the last time we covered Pants. So instead of just showing you what I think the best dinosaurs are, I think my goal here is to show you that the dinosaurs that have other value, obviously if their toughness is bigger than their cost, that's perfect, but sometimes we don't mind paying on cost for it. But the point is, there's a lot of dinosaurs that actually have upsides, like Boneheart Draxor letting us exile the top 2 at the start of our turn, making us some value if we exile certain types of card, but allowing us to cast those till end of turn, right? Extending our hand, and it's also in the air, which is somewhat relevant. Bronzebeak Foragers has answered a lot of problems in games for me when it comes in for each opponent, exile up to 1 non-land permanent for as long as it's on the battlefield. It also has a really interesting activated ability. So for X and a white, you could put a card with mana value X exiled with it into its owner's graveyard, and if you do, you gain X life. This is a really interesting way, and I've actually only ever had it happen once. Well, let's say an opponent's going to remove Bronzebeak Foragers to get the thing that you exiled back. Well, you could, if you have the mana, pay the mana into it to just put it back in their graveyard, and then they don't get the thing back. Again, it hasn't happened very often, but it is important to know that it is an option. Curious Altosaur, the first example of a creature that has more toughness than we're paying for it, so it's a great value in that sense. Just draws us a card whenever a dino hits a player in combat, which is what we want to be doing a lot and can actually help us fill our hand out and use on future turns, right? Dinosaurs on a Spaceship just gives all of our dinosaurs +1/+1 vigilance and trample. The reason this is here is not just because it's a great buff effect to all of your dinosaurs, and personally a great reminder of how much I love Matt Smith, Sarah of Doctor Who. But this is an example of reminding yourselves that any buffs that you give to your creatures, when a creature comes in, it's going to have those buffs when you check its toughness for Pantlaza's ability. So with a Spaceship out, Dreadmaw's a 7/7, Goreclaw's a 13/13, so you could see that these buffs are actually really helpful for a lot of our dinosaurs in the process. Earthshaker Dreadmaw is a 6/6 for 6, but has a really great ability to draw us cards equal to each other dinosaur we control on the battlefield, which is a huge ability if you're looking to refill your hand and keep a big turn going. Galta, probably one of my favorite dinosaurs in almost all of its iterations. This is the first one, the one that costs X less, where X is the total power of your creature's control. Almost always Galta's coming down for just double green mana as a 12/12 that's going to discover you for 12 and hit almost anything in our deck, which is very useful. I didn't put Galton Mavrin here, although it's in the deck and it's a great one in its own right. And then the new Galta we'll talk about in a future slide. Hulking Raptor adding us double green at the start of each of our pre-combat main phases, or our pre-combat main phase is really nice. It's one of the unfortunate dinos that's toughness is less than what we're paying for it, but I think the War 2 and ramping us is more than worth the mana, as it can give us mana turn over turn. Sunwing is a nice piece to kind of poke at our opponents a little bit. Having all their creatures come in tapped and being in the air is a great combo, and you'd be very surprised how often creatures coming in tapped can really hurt your opponents and what they're trying to do. Kogel and Yudaro is a 6 mana 7/7, so already great for the purposes of Pantlaza, but has two really interesting abilities. You can either have it come in with Trample and Haste, or have it come in and fight a creature you don't control. Both really relevant abilities. It just depends on what stage of the game you're at. And if you have another way to give Kogel and Yudaro Haste and Trample, it's a great way for it to just come in and fight something and still get to attack. Polani's Hatcher is another example of a creature that doesn't look good toughness-wise for what we're paying for it, but what it's here for is giving all of our other dinosaurs haste. This is a great creature to either cheat in, which we'll talk about later, or have out so that every dino that comes in has haste and can get attacking and get dealing damage. Pugnacious Hammerskull, a 3 mana 6/6, another perfect trait. Another perfect Pantlaza dino that we love, getting us extra value for its cost. Same thing with the Quartzwood Crasher being a 6/6 for 5. But the Crasher actually helps us out with whenever one or more creatures we control with trample deal combat damage to a player, we make an XX token where X is the amount of damage those creatures dealt to that player. So we can actually make up to 3 of them in a turn if we have trample creatures that attack each player and deal damage. And then those are dinosaurs on future turns that can really help us out. Note that if we really truly couldn't get a dinosaur down in a turn, Pantlaza doesn't say non-token. Right, so there is a world where we could wait, and if we know Crasher is going to allow us to make a pretty big dino, we could wait and do it that way. Register Alpha is another one of our haste enablers, allowing all our other dinosaurs to have haste. Temple Altasar is going to help us with some of the damaged board wipe protection. It says if a source would, or combat, if a source would deal damage to a dinosaur you control, another one, so everyone but Altasar, prevent all but one of that damage. Just a nice way to protect them a little bit. Not going to help you against things like Death Touch, but it will help you against somebody who's maybe like trying to block with Lifelinkers to try to maybe live through an attack or try to balance out some of the damage coming in, because the damage is prevented. They're not going to get all of it. Could be nice against something with first strike or double strike, in some quarter case scenarios. Carnosaur is really fun because it's a 6 mana dino that comes in and discovers 5 on its own ability, and then if it's with Pantlaza, it's going to discover 6 as well. Double trigger is great and can really dig and find some cool stuff. Vulpurn Tyrant is probably one of my favorite dinos printed recently. Whenever another creature power 4 greater comes in, you draw a card and gain 3 life, and if it dies, it comes back as a token. I mean, this is a great ability. We see this ability on some of the cards we'll talk about later, and the cards we really care about for support pieces. But this is great because it's on a dinosaur body, and a fairly large one at that. Wrathful Raptors says whenever a dinosaur we control is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target that isn't a dinosaur. This is kind of a fun 2-card combo with Blasphemous Act if you have enough dinosaurs out. Blasphemous Act is a board wipe that deals 13 damage to each creature. Well, effectively, if you have 9 dinos out, you can deal 39 to each of your opponents, which is probably more than likely enough, depending on what stage you're game in the end to end the game. But otherwise, Raptors just says if you block, you're just going to take the damage anyway and maybe have a chance to trample over. And then Zakama is just one of those big dinos we love to see. A 9 mana 9/9, and if it comes in and we casted it, we can untap all lands we control, allowing us to go even deeper that turn. I've had some crazy turns where Zakama is that way to cap off our big turn. But okay, I think some of the best ways we can use our dinosaurs is to cheat them in, especially with haste whenever possible. And there's a couple interesting ways to do this. The newer Atali from March of the Machine, everybody exiles until they hit an on-land card. We can play all of them if we want to. This is a great way to cheat in, a big dinosaur. The new Galta, when it comes in, lets you put any number of creature cards from our hand on the battlefield, just cheating way more dinosaurs in it. And the hope is, you have one of those haste enablers, and we have other haste enablers as well, to allow those dinos to attack right away. Gishath, another great Naya dinosaur commander in its own right. Whenever it hits a player in combat, you reveal that many cards on the top, and you can put any number of dinosaurs from among them back on, onto the battlefield. Hunting Velociraptor, if we've hit an opponent, can allow our dinosaurs to be casted for 2 and a red, a great ability, especially when you start dealing with big dinosaurs. Savage Order is a spell that lets you sacrifice a creature power 4 or greater to go get any dinosaur from your library and put it on the battlefield. This most of the time is going to be used to go get the new Galta to just dump your hand on the battlefield. But there have been other scenarios where I've actually wanted to go get a haste enabler if I already have my board set up, or to go get something like dinosaurs on a spaceship. There's a lot of ways to search in our deck to find what we want, but most of the time this is for new Galta. And then sneak attack, pay a red to put a dino in, and it gets haste, and you sack it at the end step. I mean, if you have enough dinos in your hand and a big enough turn, it may not even matter. If you can get into combat and deal some big damage. I think the other thing to think about this deck is if we have other ways to discover, it's really useful. I think the most obvious one is Monstrous Vortex. Whenever we cast a creature with power 5 or greater, we discover X, where X is its mana value. This happens on cast, so everything that fulfills that's going to go off, and then we can choose what we want, right, with Pants to trigger. Sunfurl Imitator, whenever it attacks, can become a copy of another dinosaur except it's named Sunfurl Imitator. This is really nice because then you can have it copy Pants, and now you have 2 copies of Pants' ability to go off each turn, allowing you for more Discover. And then a card that I admittedly probably shouldn't have put in the deck way sooner than now. I kept seeing it in all the message forums and all that kind of stuff. I just kept looking past it until this time around. That's Cream of the Crop. So it says whenever a creature comes into play, you look at the top X, where X is its power, and put one of them on top and the rest on the bottom. How this effectively is going to work is we can do this every time a creature comes in, which just helps us sculpt our deck. But specifically, we want to do this when we're going to be discovering with Pantlaza. We look at the top X cards, preferably find the one we want and put it on top. Then when we can discover, we basically get to pick more or less what we get to discover into, which is huge, and I think can make a big difference in a lot of games if you can get Cream of the Crop down. But all right, we're playing big dinos, hopefully giving them haste. I mean, I think you know what comes next, and it's get into combat and deal some damage. Garruk's Uprising gives all of our dinos trample and gives that draw on power 4 or greater. We have things like Overwhelming Stampede to just give them all trample and a big buff. Chroma's Will came in this pre-con, and I've won plenty of games with it, especially when you have a huge board of dinos. Giving them flying, double strike, and lifelink is normally enough to win the game straight out. And if your opponent has enough to block them, you're also giving them indestructible and pro all colors, so they can't block. And you could see where, this starts to just become basically a game ender, just like something like Triumph for the Hordes as well. But the point is, you're normally going to have a pretty large board, say, of dinos, and this is going to be that last bastion to help you get in. But as far as recent ads go, well, that's where we get to talk about our Eighth of Drift dinos. And I think all 3 of them have a slot in this deck. Agnosaur Rex, I mean, there is no downside to this card. An 8/8 for 5 that you're discovering for 8 on hits a lot of our deck. And it has trample, so it's going to be a nice attacker once it actually gets there. Regal Imperiosaur, 4 toughness for 3 mana. Again, great stats for Pants. Buffs all of the dinosaurs. Perfect. Helps us discover more for other ones. And then Tarion, although it doesn't have any abilities, is 7 toughness for 5 mana. Again, with any other buffs, could be a big discover. And I just love the idea of this huge dinosaur that even though it doesn't have any stats, it can become a problem because we have other things in the deck, like Rhythm of the Wild and these haste dinos and things to give dinos trample. Like, there's going to be plenty of ways to make Tarion more than worth it. And the first time we use this to discover into something great, we're going to love Tarion in the deck, and it's going to be great for us. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again, no deck's ever complete. I'm working on Pants for a while, and I really like the deck, but there's still things I'm looking at and testing, which is, are there other dinos I need to bring in? Silent Calamity is a dino that's come back and forth in and out of the list. I really like it. It has Myriad, which means it makes a copy of itself, attacking all your other opponents. And whenever it deals damage to an opponent, you get to destroy an artifact or enchantment they control. I really love this ability. It's just you're already having to fight for the slots you have. So I haven't really quite figured out whether I want Calamity back in, but I really like the idea of it. Finale of a Station is both an early game search if you need to get a specific dinosaur, or a late game ender. Then you search your library or graveyard for a creature card with mana value X or less and put it on the battlefield. And if it's 10 or more, all creatures we control gain +X in haste. I just love the idea of this card. The truth is I just couldn't find a slot for it. That's probably a little pedantic in the sense that there's probably a slot for it. But the truth is I'm not sure what it is yet. I want to work it in. One, because I think this art is literally perfect for this deck with the dinosaurs. And I think it makes a ton of sense being a card that is just very Ixalan in its flavor. So it will come back in. The question is just finding the slot. And then as far as the cheating inside goes, there is Monster Manual, a card that I see played in a lot of Pantlaza lists. I like it. One, in agreeing to put a creature from our hand on the battlefield makes a ton of sense. I get it. I guess I've always just liked Sneak Attack a little bit better for its ability to get multiple per turn. But again, that comes with the downside of sacrificing them, where Monster Manual doesn't. Again, I think Manual makes a ton of sense. The question is just, where does it fit in? And I think this and Devastation are probably the next two cards that are going to come in and finding slots for them. But let's get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on the channel is not to find Magical Christmas Land. It's not to determine our best plays. It's to run through our deck, get some test hands, and understand how we're going to build our board state. Here we're keeping a 4-lander with Apex Altasar up there on the top end, Nature's Lore for some ramp, and Ravenous Tyrannosaurus. Not bad. I mean, the Nature's Lore is going to get us 1 land ahead, so we're looking at least a turn of 4 Pantlaza right now. Turn we draw Urza's Incubator, which will still end up being a... this should still end up being a... I guess I'm going to Nature's Lore next turn. This is going to end up being still a turn 4 Pants, but this is going to really help on future turns in reducing the cost for Dinos. There's Rhythm of the Wild, a way to give Dinos either haste or a counter as they enter. Again, can make them bigger when they enter. Here we'll Nature's Lore and just go get the Jetmir's Garden. My thought was whether I was going to play that Lush Portico turn 1 or not, so that Repellent Craig can come in on tap, but I figure with the Lore, we're just going to end up getting the Triome anyway. There's kind of no reason not to. So here... Right, I mean, I can't play Pants anyway, and I can't probably play 2 things anyway, so I think I'll just play the Portico to Surveil, love Garruk's Uprising, and then I'll just play the Incubator naming Dinos, just as a way to get more value on future turns. Down here in Turf 4, we've got Pants coming down for 3 mana, so unless we have something really good we can get down for the other 2, I just don't see it. The Tyrannosaurus would still be 3, so we just play Pants. Pants is going to do 2 things, its ability and then Path of Ancestry to scry. We kind of have no reason not to scry, since we want to know what we're looking for. And we look into a Wrathful Raptors, which we can actually discover into. And I'm not opposed to it. I like Wrathful Raptors. It's not a bad dinosaur, and it's going to help protect us. So I think we're just going to go ahead and discover. Or sorry, it's 4 for the Discover. So it's going to go to the bottom either way. So we might as well just leave it on top, right? I forgot that Pantlaza is 4, not 5. So we get into a Migration Path. This is a great ramp spell. And this is something I've been trying to look into in this deck, is focusing more on towards these 3 and 4 mana ramp spells, because they're going to be easier to get into with most of our dinosaurs. And if I'm gonna discover into a ramp spell, it might as well give me 2 lands instead of 1. What feels better, discovering into a Migration Path or Rampant Growth, right? I mean, 2 is always better than 1. So this is going to go get us 2 basic lands. We'll go get a Plains just because we don't have one, even though we have lots of the others. And then I guess I'll just go get a Forest. Again, now this is great because we've got lots of mana for next turn. It stinks to dump the Wrathful Raptors, right, and the Succumb away, although they got shuffled, right, because of the path. So here we're sitting on 3, 6, 8 mana, and our dinosaurs are costing 3 less. So we are in the realm of Apex Altasar mana, but I kind of like to just set some things up before I put them down. Remember, Tyrannosaur is 3. So I've got 5 mana to play with. My thought is something like Garruk's Uprising. This is going to draw me a card because I have a power 4 creature when it comes in. I'm kind of thinking the Beanstalk. Beans is going to draw me another card, right? And just allow me to, again, get more value on future turns when things happen. And then I'm thinking the Tyrannosaurus. I don't have anything to devour, or at least that I don't want to devour. So that's kind of a bummer, but I'm just going to discover for 6. And if I hit into anything else, I still get to trigger both of these. So Tyrannosaurus would get cast. Now we have the question, what happens on cast, which is Beanstalk, so we draw. Okay, well, good that we drew Zakama, right? Because we couldn't discover into it anyway. So now Tyrannosaurus is going to enter. And this is where I think you have to make the decision. Do you draw off Uprising first, or do you Tyrannosaur? Well, I'm going to say in this case that I use the Path of Ancestry for Tyrannosaur. So let's scry 1 and see what we have. We have Vaultborn Tyrant. Well, I'm sorry, this would have happened on cast. So actually, we would have done a Beanstalk first to draw. Now we would scry. I can't get Tyrant with the Discover, so I'll get it with the draw off Uprising. Now let's go for 6, right? because we have these triggers, we can stack them how we want, and we get an ephemerate. Not ideal, because I can't get another discover trigger this turn. So I think I would just put it in my hand. It kind of stinks to not use it, but now I can use it on a future turn. And now we're in great shape. Whether someone wipes the board or not, we can untap, play the promenade, and I can just hard cast Zakama down for 9 mana. It's going to be 6 actually because of the incubator, which is just going to untap all my lands. Right, I can tap them and then float them in and untap them. But now the goal is going to be, how do I get myself into a way to either give my dinosaurs haste or get more of them into damage this turn, right? So let's say Zakama cast on the stack. I have the Beanstalk trigger, and I have no reason not to do the Path of Ancestry. So let's do the Ancestry first, seeing a farmland. That's fine. I'm willing to draw that, so we'll draw it. Now it's going to come in. We've got the draw and we got the discover. Let's do the discover first. Gulta, of course, is not going to work. The Great Henge is, though. It is also a 9, and the Great Henge is a huge option for us as a way to draw some cards and get some counters on our dinosaurs, allowing them to discover for a little bit more when they come in. And then Henge draws us. So we'll tap the 3 we didn't use to float, so we get them back up. So now we have 12 mana. And again, now we're just trying to dig deep for any way to give our things haste. Well, we have it in Rhythm of the Wild. So I guess technically, I could have played the Rhythm first, right? And then played Zakama to give it haste, right? And I guess that's a misplay on my part. But that is good to know that that is an option. Now we would untap with 9 mana. I like the Vaultborn for 5 here. On cast, we would draw and scry 1. Put that on bottom. And draw. It comes in with a counter because of the Great Henge and draws. We'll get the Uprising trigger and then the Discover. I guess we'll just Discover first. We discover for Touch the Spirit Realm, a way to remove something of our opponents, or we can channel it to blink our own thing. We'll just remove something, then draw. 4 mana left. I mean, Flawless is free now. Foragers might not be a bad idea. It comes down for 1 mana. And I just realized we have 2 more mana with the tree. That would be 5. We would have 4 left. 6. 1 there, and then there would be my thought maybe, and I think we can end this playtest here. Again, the hope would be more value, but again, they're all coming in with counters. They're all going to be able to attack this turn, take some big damage to our opponents, and and have some fun. Let's go into the next one, keeping a 3-lander with Nature's Lore, Flare Cultivation, another ramper, and that Rhythm of the Wild, and then Beans again. We don't mind a hand like this, right, because we have the ramp. We don't mind ramping before Pantlaza gets down, especially if it gets us the things we need. I think we still Nature's Lore this turn for the garden. Again, grow our way up. Now we have the choice of either going for something like the Beans this next turn, or we could just cultivate Flare of Cultivation into Pantlaza next turn on turn 4, right? Either way we have the mana for it right next turn. I think I'll just go with the Flare this turn. We'll go Plains down. Go Forest in hand. Now we for sure, right, have Pants next turn. We don't mind, right, ramping the first 2 turns just to get ourselves there. Because now, we'll go ahead and discover off Pants. It's got to be for 4. So we might have to dig a little bit, depending on what we find. Altosaurus 5. There's a Sky Shroud Claim. Again, another 4 mana ramp source. We can just put these back in because we're going to have to shuffle. Now let's do we get 2 forest cards. Put them on the battlefield. So they don't actually have to be basic forests. They just have to be dual lands. So we already got Jetmir's Garden. I've got a couple left. We saw the Lush Portico, and then I have that, but I think I'll just get Canopy Vista and Cinderglade just to make it easier here since we saw them. And now we're just sitting pretty, right? We have tons of mana. Now we can just keep getting to the board. And I think this is what ideally you want this deck to do, is get out early, get the mana down, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana, play the Rhythm. I guess you could play Zakama instead this turn, but I still like the idea of just getting the value in, setting up, since we don't have to commit to do anything too much yet. But that's 5. So I've got 4 left. And I guess it probably would have made more sense to Zakama. But hey, you never know. and I think probably Zakama would have got us to at least discover into that Carney T, right? So I think that makes more sense. So let's suppose this, say we did that. This discovers into the Carney T, up the Beanstalk draws us a land, and now we're sitting pretty. I mean, this has haste or gets the counters. I think in this sense we can just give them the counters, and we're in great shape for next turn. That Carney T would have drawn us as well off the Beanstalk. Now coming to our next turn, we would see Galton Maverin, a great attacker and a great way to discover for higher than its cost with 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 mana. Let's do that. Let's do that for our cast for the turn that draws us on the beans. Comes in. We give it haste. It's going to make us a 10/10 this turn because of the Zakama. I think I'll give it haste, and we'll go ahead and discover for a Chrome as well. That's kind of a huge draw because that gives them double strike, flying, lifelink. This makes a 10/10 when it attacks. The 10/10 won't get this ability. Probably at least 2 players this turn, and then we can just hit the 2 players we're the most worried about and probably clean up the other one next turn, as we commit more to our board. Let's get into playtest number 3. Keeping a 4-lander with beans. There's the Great Henge again in Rhythm of the Wild. We're just really loving Rhythm of the Wild in this video. Again, Great Henge is great, especially if we can get some good mana out of it, or if we can get some counters and draws out of it. We'll do the Beanstalk to draw. We kind of have no reason not to. Here in turn 3, I like the Rhythm, but I mean, either way, we're a turn off of We're a turn off of Pantlaza. The only thought about going like in Sunfurl Imitator instead is that then it could become a copy of Pantlaza, but I think still at this rate we're a turn off. So I kind of think I'd rather just get the Rhythm down just to make sure our Dinos can't be countered when we do cast them. We'll cast the Imitator and have it come in with a counter. Again, we don't really want to attack this turn because my thought now is on turn 5, we cast Pantlaza. Right? We get to draw because it's mana value 5 or greater. It comes in. We'll give it a counter because I kind of just want more of a discover. And we're going to discover into 5 for Bronzebeak Foragers. We'll have it come in with a counter. It gets to exile some things. Sunfurl attacks, become a copy of Pantlaza. So we've got 2 of them, right? This is the ideal case that we saw last time. Getting into this turn, I have a 5 power creature, so Great Henge is 4. How much value does it really add me? It would draw off of beans, but I still can't play Vaultborn, right? Because, well, I guess, yeah, that would be 4, right? It would leave me with 2 mana plus the 2 from the Great Henge, which would be 4 mana, and I don't have any dinosaurs I can cast for 4 mana, right? So I think it makes more sense here to play something like Carney T or the Tyrannosaurus to get the double discover. I guess I could also go for Polani's Hatcher, but it kind of doesn't make sense, right? Because I already have haste with the Rhythm. So I think here I'd go with something like Carney T. It's going to draw me a card on the Beanstalk, and then it's going to come in. I'll give it the counter. Well, I guess haste, because either way we're going to discover for 6 twice, right? We get Farseek the first time. So we'll go ahead and resolve it. Just go get anything we have left with the dual typing. I guess we'll do something like Commercial District just to see what's on top of our libraries. Marauding Raptor. Don't really need that. We'll go ahead and dump it into the graveyard. We don't really need it. Now we go for the second one, Atali. Atali's great. Would be a good attacker this turn, right? Have it come in with a counter. That's going to draw us a card off beans. And again, now we're just in great shape. We can take some attacks, but the truth is we're just setting our stuff up for better turns. We can do something like the Stampede next turn for, it's 7 at the moment if we don't put a bigger dinosaur in. If we get the Henge down next turn, it's coming in for just double green. We'd have 5 plus the Henge. Might be a better turn to see. But since we had the Atali come in with if it came with haste this turn, we could see what we get right off top of everybody's libraries, or we could have the counter and save it for next turn. This isn't a bad state to be in, especially when you have some other big pieces to put down. And since we're discovering twice, right, this is just good for us. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Pantlaza down in the comment section below. I love the deck. I think it sits in that mid to high 3 threshold. I love it. It's kind of been where I've wanted it to sit. I don't really have any intentions to drive it up any higher. I love it. It's a ton of fun to play, and I can't wait to see what else we get to add to the deck. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.